Hello, everybody. Welcome to What Do You Do podcast. Today is a special episode because we have our first guest with us today. Alongside here, I got my co-host Cal Vola, and we're going to let the guest introduce himself. But before we do so, I just want to say a huge thank you to everybody that is watching the episode or listening. If you do want to get more information, do hit the subscribe button and hit the notifications so that way you don't miss out on future episodes as well. But let us dive right in and let our guest introduce himself.
Oh, well, hey, Cal, JJ, what's going on? So my name's Adam. My name's Adam McClandress for everybody out there. I work for a company called PosPro Financial, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about, talk about a bit about what, JJ?
About what you do.
What do I do?
What do I do? And what it took to get you to where you are today. And maybe some goals that you have for your future, but yeah, just to start out quickly, like where were you born? Where did you grow up? What schools did you go to?
Yeah, so I grew up in Northern Ontario, here in good old Canada, the Great White North for all you international viewers out there. I'm sure you guys have people all over the world now, right? Like this is it. So I grew up in a small town called Webwood, Ontario, a town of 600 people.
Oh, wow.
Where anytime that I would leave, they would change the sign, $5.99, 600, back we go. Grew up again there, split time actually. Growing up, my mom had moved down to North York, so just around like that Thornhill, Vaughan kind of area. So I kind of got a chance to split time, learning what it was like to be in rural Ontario versus being in an urban environment, learning what the TTC is like and all of that stuff. So that's where I'd grown up. High school, went to Espanola High School, which is Go Spartans. It's one of these where it was, Webwood was like a feeder community to Espanola, which was like the next closest town. Espanola was still a whopping 5,000 people. So, I mean, it's really staggering stuff.
Right.
But yeah,
awesome.
that's where I grew up and where I went to school. So,
what were some of your hobbies when you grew up?
Growing up, man, I was a nerd. Dude, I loved books, man, like so much. Like what was funny was, growing up, my parents would always tell me stories and they would say like, Adam, like we would go, in and we, be a sunny day in the summer and, other kids would be playing outside and there you'd be at your desk, just reading a book inside, just sitting all prim and proper, just ready to go. And, that was like when I was young, but growing up, I mean, in a town that small, you almost have to create your own fun.
True.
Because, when it's time for, mom or dad to say, all right, it's sunny out, time to get out of the house and have some fun. Yeah. All of my buddies and I, we were big into bike riding and, building trails in the middle of the woods and doing that. Started to play sports as well. And, between that and academics, I always found that I was just like always doing something. So growing up, that was kind of what I had really, sunk my teeth into. And if it wasn't, one commitment in an evening, it was another. So
right,
cool.
So what did your parents do, Adam? What kind of got you? I mean, you're outside all the time and whatnot. Were they kind of the same way, or what were they?
It's funny because they were both workaholics, and God love them for it because they helped breed someone who just is like, okay, let's if you're not making it happen for yourself, then nobody else will, right?
Sure.
And I definitely grew up with those values and having a dad who was an electrician at the pulp and paper mill in Espanola. It's one industry kind of town, and they supported most of the families there, but with the jobs that they created. So my dad was an electrician there for 42 years. My mom managed a group of pharmacies throughout Northern Ontario for a long time, and had then later in life had moved to a sales role where she was on the road running a jewelry company. And I would say that from a very young age, these work ethic type skills were built into me, and lived and breathed it. So yeah.
Sure. Definitely at a younger age too.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah. So would you say like they're your role models?
I would say that my parents are definitely two of the people that I, love dearly, and that I definitely look up to the most, because I mean, Sherry and Gerald, if you're watching this, they, I definitely can't thank them enough for the skills and the lessons that they taught me.
True.
I would say that there's a lot of other role models that I have in my life too as I've gone on, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's your folks, man, right? It's I know that some folks have different types of relationships, but I'm so lucky that I can call either of my parents right now, and we can have those types of conversations together. So
cool.
Sure. Yeah.
Now, did you have any aspirations when you were younger of what you wanted to be when you grew up?
Oh my God, yeah. Oh yeah, and it's so funny because, like, again, growing up in a small town, you become like this with your buddies, and
right.
A lot of my friends, like I've known, like I'm 29 now, and my best friend, my oldest friend, I've known him for 26 years. Wow. And so they will laugh because they'll say, like, man, even when you were in kindergarten, you were just very prim and proper, and just a delegate. Right.
And you still are.
And so it's like, hey, it's funny how it's like full circle, man, right? It's full circle. Yeah. So one of the cool things was, like, at a very young age, I think I got into public speaking when I was at a really young age, where you'd write a speech, and then you'd say it in front of your class, and then the best go on, and then on and on and on. Yeah. So I was big into that, and into doing those types of things, and I think I was always told at a young age, like, you should be a lawyer, or you should be an actor, or somebody who's using their voice and using that type of energy to engage with others. Yeah, I would say, like, from a young age, that was kind of the direction that I had started to get pushed. But it wasn't until high school that I started to get a firmer sense of, like, what that actually might look like for me. Tossed around with the idea of being an English teacher, because I really loved to, dive in and read and explore and analyze and dissect, what some of these texts were. Then as I went on, I thought, what, English, being an English teacher is an incredible, job to do. But I think that for me, there was probably something else that was out there that might suit what that might look like for me a bit further. And for whatever reason, I started to dive into psychology, and I just really caught, that was like a hook for me. I would have been in, like, grade 11, maybe grade 12, when I started taking whatever classes, my high school had. It was Northern Ontario, so, you take what you can get, and I was able to really get some base knowledge, and it helped kind of steer me that when I was applying for universities and applying for schools, I started looking at psychology programs. So that's kind of how that, next chapter started to unfold for me.
Got it. Yeah, no, makes a ton of sense. And so which university did you end up going to, Adam?
So I ended up at Nipissing University in North Bay. And so it's a funny story of kind of how that ended up, coming to be. I had taken a couple of years, off in between, when I had graduated. It took an extra year to graduate. I tell people, it was a victory lap, but anybody who knows me back then, it was not a victory lap. But between that and I took a year off to work, because I frankly just had kind of lost a little bit about what really was starting to drive me, and was just a young kid figuring it out. And so when I finally did kind of get into a school, Nipissing was one that was welcoming me with open arms. And when I had gone to visit there, one of the really cool things about North Bay, and I don't know if either of you have spent any time there or not, but it's such an amazing city, and I still live there today, and we're talking 10 years later. So when it comes to there, it had the best of both worlds for me, based off of the environments that I grew up in. It had, all of the small town values and those, community rooted beliefs and things that I really liked about growing up in Webwood, and being able to, run into people that at the grocery store, and you're out for a walk, and somebody that you hardly know is like, oh, hey, Adam, how's it going? And, like, the stuff that just feels good, right? Also, the big city, like, it had a Walmart, so that was pretty great. That was pretty great too.
You made it when you had a Walmart,
Let's go. Yeah,
big enough.
Yeah. So Nipissing for me was kind of a clear-cut choice because of that. And I knew within my first month, when professors started to get to know me by name, this is in my very first semester of my very first year, and when you have people that are experts in their field, and they're talking to you, and talking to you by name, and they remember how you'd done, and they also remember when you'd missed class too. And there was just, I could feel that there was a very special kind of thing that was going on there, and I knew that I wanted to keep going. So.
And sorry, what was the course you took in university?
Yeah, so my degree is in psychology, but my focus ended up shifting from being that kind of core psychology, psychoanalysis type stuff. We talk about the ways that our paths kind of diverge and end up getting us closer to where we actually need to be.
Right.
So I had, an intro to psych, Psych 101. We had done a unit on neuroscience, which is the study of the brain. And oh my gosh, it just caught me like a hook. I was like, this is it for me. Like, I'm so fascinated by this. So my degree and my education ended up being rooted in neuroscience and stats. So my degree's in psych, but I ended up getting, a certificate in neuroscience, and had done a lot of research and work in stats while I was there too.
And just out of curiosity, what was the cost of the education, and how long was it?
Yeah, so one of the great things about Nipissing is that significantly cheaper to do an undergraduate degree. So a bachelor's degree at Nipissing at the time was approximately probably close to about like $3,500 to $4,000 per semester. And so, look at like a 4-year degree, which is what most people end up doing for their bachelor's. Some people, like myself, do it in 5. You just end up being, so caught up in different extracurriculars that you have to stretch it out a bit. But that's typically what that looks like. Now, for a lot of folks who are living away from home for the first time, they also have to be thinking about, what do living accommodations look like? So, am I living in residence? Am I getting an apartment, or am I renting a room somewhere? So there's added costs that look, that work that way whenever you're living away from home for the first time.
Right.
I definitely was somebody who leaned on student loans throughout my education, and had a lot of help from my parents along the way, which I was definitely grateful for, and I'm grateful for to this day. But it is not a cheap endeavor, and it's especially not a cheap endeavor for a young person who, at the time, and I know that the Ontario curriculum has changed for high school students, but financial literacy was not something that was taught, to me in high school.
Sure.
So I'm definitely excited that folks in high school today are getting that type of education, because, university ain't cheap.
That's good.
So true. I mean, it's crazy. When I was back in school, I wish that there was definitely a course on financial literacy and learning about credit cards, learning about how you're going to pay for your education, how you're going to pay it all back, how much money you have to make to be able to live, to rent a place, to pay for, cost of living. And a lot of people get tied up in student loans and whatnot. It takes 10, 15, 20 years to pay these things off, right? So another big thing is people go to school for one thing, they come out doing something completely different that they're way more passionate about. And there's just no way that they're going to pay off those loans, quickly enough. So did you have a job when you were in school, or what was your first job?
Yeah, so when I was at Nipissing, I would say that the first kind of real job that I had ended up doing was working in residence as a residence don, or a residence RA, like an RA, if some people are familiar with that, where basically like you end up helping supervise a floor of students who are living away from home for the first time. So at the time, with that came that you had free accommodations as a residence don. So for me, that was a huge part of my financial burden that I didn't have to pay for. Right. The trade-off was that sometimes you ended up having to put in more hours than what a regular 9 to 5 would, and you also weren't seeing a paycheck. It was just you're getting free living, and that's it.
Yeah.
So, there were trade-offs that way, but that was my first job, and I'd done that for a couple of years. While I was there, I'd also became very involved in the research community, like the academic research community at Nipissing, where I would work with professors in a research lab, and we would do research projects, and we would, try to, publish. If you've ever, heard of those, find one peer-reviewed article to do. We were trying to write those, and we were trying to put those out into the world. And I became heavily involved with that. That became something that I just really fell in love with. And so that I ended up being a research assistant for a long time while I was, in school. Sometimes I'd put in like 8-10 hours a day in the labs, while going to class, while doing other things. And beyond that, because of those relationships that I formed with my professors that I was working so closely with, they would say, hey, I have a teaching assistant position open, if you want to help me, run this course. And that would look like me, sometimes, sitting in while folks are doing an exam or a test. Sometimes that looked like me marking those assignments. Sometimes it looked like me, doing like a guest lecture or a part of something for that. So that also helped, offset some of that cost for me while I was at school.
Awesome. Wow. So, I mean, I guess from like a time commitment standpoint, how much time would you spend like per week, and like what was the compensation when you were going to school? This is a great option for people that are going to school right now.
Right. Yeah.
And I mean, it's a great way to help pay for it. I have friends that have done it. And,
Totally.
And whatnot. So.
Yeah, I would say like in terms of a time commitment standpoint, like the investment versus the return, if you're looking at it only financially, like it might not be the best bet versus like if you were a server, for instance, and making some, a lot of cash over a short period of time.
Right.
I would say like in terms of investment, like there were weeks, man, where like apart from my studies, apart from going to class, I was putting in like a 40-hour work week doing things. And I, was making minimum wage-ish, student wage-ish,
Yep.
at best. But for me, the focus was less on what the financial return would be and what the experiences were going to be like for me. Being involved has always been something that's been important to me. And also, at the time I had, started studying neuro, and I really wanted to pursue medicine. I realized that I kind of wanted to follow that path. And I thought, you know what, while I'm trying to build my application to be stronger, because you need to have, certain things that are beyond just how well you do in terms of marks in order to get into medical school or any graduate school program. I thought, you know what, if I can volunteer a lot, if I can work and have some of these diverse and rich experiences, that will do me better than if I don't.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. And that's a big thing today in like education, is that you can go for your bachelor's degree and you're like 4 years, I did it, then you come out and then you go and apply for a job and like, you know what? This guy's got a master's and he's doing all this extra stuff and he has experience. So like now it seems like you can get your bachelor's and then you have to do this extra education on top of it, get your master's, and now you're qualified, but you still need maybe experience in the industry and whatnot. So,
and there's this big trade-off between, the qualification versus experience where, yes, I can go and do, a master's right out of, my bachelor's degree. However, is that more valuable than say 2 years worth of, life or work experience? And ultimately that's going to be up to the hiring manager to decide. But it to your point, it's definitely challenging for a lot of young people out there who are trying to answer to themselves like, well, what's next? Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what did you do after that?
After Nipissing, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So after Nipissing, it was funny. So I had, while I was trying to get into, medical school, I was coming into the summer, heading into my last year. And, my girlfriend at the time was helping me, try to find some jobs. I was really kind of dragging my butt that summer, just like, you know what, I'm just going to kind of do the research thing again. And she's like, no, you need to make some freaking money here, all right, man.
Right,
so
sure.
I had she had found this job posting, and she said, hey, I know when you were in high school, you worked at your best friend's dad's dealership, selling power sports and marine and all of that stuff. And she said, there's actually this company that's in North Bay that does financing for all of those things. I went, oh, that's interesting. And so she sent me the job posting. And I looked, and when I was at the dealership, we'd utilized this company to do the financing for if a customer came in and they wanted to purchase, say a boat or an ATV, we could lean on this company to help get that customer approved for financing. So it was funny because I recognized it and I thought, oh, hey, well, I know those guys. I'm gonna send an email. I'm gonna reference where I'd worked for in high school, and I'll just see if I can, get a gig. And sure enough, I was able to get an interview. The owner of the company sent me an email back not too long later and said, well, I'd really like to meet with you. and so we did. So we sat down and we talked about things, and I ended up working there for that summer as a summer student. I'd worked hard, any kind of extra hours that needed to be put in, I was always willing to do. And, heading into my last year of school, I let them know what my expectations were, to say, hey, I'm planning on applying to medical school, and that's it. But if I'm able to work throughout the school year as I can, I would certainly love to, because I've really enjoyed it here.
Right.
And so Brad Long, who's the owner of PosPro Financial, he had said to me, he said, well, son, I promise to you, I will support you however I can for you to be able to get in. He said, whatever I can do for you, let me know, and I'm here for you. But if you don't get in on your first try, give me a shot at bat and let me see if I can make it worth your while to stick around. Yeah.
So they liked you.
they liked me, and it was. I would say that in addition to that, I really liked them too. It was very much a family-oriented atmosphere. I mean, I think that most of the people that were there at the time had been there for at least 2 or 3 years. So it was very much this. Okay, well, there's a cool thing going on here where there's this longevity. Everybody kind of knows each other. We're also talking to people who are excited to talk to us every day about, hey, can I get my Sea-Doo for this, weekend or that? So it was fun. And, as we kind of went on, as the school year went on, I'd applied to school, and unfortunately I didn't get into medical school on my first try. Now, it is something that is, I would say, relatively common. Lots of folks don't get in on their first opportunity, and some schools like to see you, apply and reapply to show that, hey, I actually want this, right? Like this is something that I want to pursue. I thought, gosh, I was disheartened. I wasn't really sure, kind of what was going to be next, because I had, created this identity for myself where it's like, I'm already a doctor. But darn it, I haven't put in any of the work to actually get there yet, right? I've put in the work to at least put together an application, but even still, I still need to do this. So there's this almost identity crisis that was going on. Yeah. From there, I'd had the conversation with Brad, and he made me an offer I couldn't refuse. And 6 years later, here I am. So
wow, 6 years of positive promotion. And how long have they been around for?
PosPro Financial has been around since 1997. I started off as a company called Positive Promotions, and we were that way for, oh my gosh, years and years. And it was about 4 years ago that we underwent a branding change to PosPro Financial. Oh. And when Brad had created the company as Positive Promotions, it's because he wanted to promote a positive attitude.
Right.
It's so beautiful, right? And that was it. And I think that, those roots and those, like that DNA is just like so close.
And just so we understand, like PosPro is a financing team that helps dealers finance vehicles for the consumer.
Totally.
Right.
So the best way that I can explain it, the elevator, type pitch is, we're a mortgage broker, but for fun purchases. So, if you walk into, a dealership and say, hey, I want to buy that boat or that RV or that ATV or motorcycle or tractor, you name it. But I don't want to use my own cash for it. What are your financing options?
Right.
In the automotive industry, it's very common for the salesperson to walk you over to the business office, where you'll sit down with a business manager or a financial services manager, and they'll have a conversation with you about, what your credit looks like. They'll take down an application, and then they'll shop the banks for you. Now, in the power sports and recreational space, it's actually a lot more common, and at least in Ontario, to outsource that to an external business office. So that's essentially what PosPro Financial is, and we're now the largest ones in Ontario that do what we do. We're number one in Canada for RV financing with one of the major banks in Canada. Wow. And we do a lot of business, and it's really cool.
And just curious, what is the benefit to the dealer of having a company like PosPro?
So there's the very simplest way to say it is we save you time and we save you money. And that's basically it. So, some dealerships might say, hey, we want to do it in-house and do it ourselves. which is fine if you've got really good people doing it and you hope those people never get sick and you hope those people never take, maternity or paternity leave. You hope that, nothing bad ever happens to those people's lives, because then your finance and insurance office has now, become strained. So the benefit ends up being, well, now you can lean on our team of almost 20 full-time staff plus summer students. We're answering the phone 7 days a week. We're there for you evenings and weekends, and we're going to be able to take care of your business to make sure that there's no hiccups. We'll also offer, the customers that we're working with to get them set up for financing, certain protections that are available for them if they want them, and if they don't, that's okay too. But we also offer things like life insurance on the loan or disability coverage on the loan, offer extended warranty on the dealer's behalf, or write-off coverage. So the thing with these is that for a lot of customers that we work with, we'll offer them to them, and they'll say, hey, that's great. I appreciate you explaining what these things are and what they'll do, but it's actually just not something that's for me. Then there's some customers that say, you know what, I actually have such a hard time getting my own life insurance because I'm diabetic or because of this. And one of the benefits with that, kind of group insurance means that folks who are perhaps harder to insure are able to get that type of coverage. So
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So you guys, you work with a bank, and then that bank basically finances all these loans, or do you guys have like your own like private fund or something like that to pull from?
Yeah, so you hit the nail on the head on the first, and that's kind of exactly what we do. So we have relationships with I think it's close to 10 or 12 different banks and lenders throughout the country that we utilize them to be able to find the customers the best approvals that they qualify for. So yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
From folks who are able to say walk into their own bank branch and be able to get a loan, signed up no problem. We may be able to offer them, a more competitive rate than what they could offer at the branch level because we're working at the head office level. Or, for folks who say maybe have more challenge credit, everybody's got a story, and the best thing about us is that we don't judge. We want to make sure that if we take care of you, now when say maybe things aren't going as great, but you're looking for an opportunity to rebuild your credit, we want to give you that opportunity and see what can happen there. One of the really cool things is that we've seen a lot of customers who have come back to us for their 8th, 9th loan. And some of them have said that, we started working with you, 20 years ago when we, shopped here for the first time, and now you've been the only people that we've ever thought of. One is because you made us feel good. And two, when the going was tough for me, all those years ago, you treated me just like, I would have wanted to have been treated. And now, now that I've cleaned my things up and things are A1 for me, I'll never forget that. So,
right.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And what's your roles and responsibility with PosPro? Are you the finance manager?
So I had been for a number of years. So okay. I had when I had first started there, I had started just working as an admin assistant, where I was helping to talk to customers over the phone, taking down their information, sending it off to the banks, and then one of the finance managers was taking care of it from there. Then for a period of time, I was working as a finance manager and a senior finance manager, where I was talking to customers, working to get them approved. Going through what their different options were and setting up those loans and paperwork and working with the banks to get those deals funded. So I had been doing that. And then it's been a little over a year now that I've been doing it, but now my role has changed, where now I'm focused more on the dealer relationship side, where I now help manage all of the relationships for us in Northern Ontario, Ottawa, and Muskoka. So working, not as much on the client-facing side, now where I'm not talking to customers every day, but I am talking to our dealer partners every day and dealer partners that we'd like to work with every day. So,
right. Was that like a smooth transition? Like, how did you feel talking from not only a customer, from a retail point of view, but now you got to pitch it to like the business owner?
Yeah.
Which, I mean, really, a business owner, I'm sure at one point in his life has been a salesperson.
For sure.
And they see a salesperson walk up, and they're probably just right away, they look at you and they just want to run away from you.
Let's poke some holes in this guy.
Yeah. They're just like, okay, yeah, listen, like, it was very early on, and to highlight that, it was very early on, flash, blah, 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 blah. And then it's just like, okay, all right.
Right.
Are you done selling me, or are you going to talk to me now?
Right.
Sure.
And I found that, very early on, I was just eager, super excited, rah, rah, rah. But then I remembered my time working at the dealership level, and one of my mentors, Kevin Muncaster, who owns Trailside Sports in Espanola. I just always remember whenever sales guys would come in and do the same thing to him, and just hey, come on, man, just talk to me like a real person. And that's one of the lessons that I learned from him, was just be real and be authentic with whomever you're working with in a business to business capacity, because even if we're not going to do business together, I still want to like talking to you, right?
Right.
I still want to at least chat with you, even if you're not our partner of choice, for instance.
And even just create a relationship with that dealer, whether it's not today, but maybe 5 years from now, right?
Dude.
Or even like you said, if somebody had to go on fraternity leave, right?
Yeah.
For that 1 year,
Yeah.
and they don't want to hire a new person, you guys can swoop in and help out wherever you can, right?
Turnkey, man. And I mean, that's exactly it for us. And I started to shift, and I think that like anytime you're taking on a new role anywhere, you always have like this concept in your head of what you think it actually is, until you start to learn like what it actually is and what will actually help you be successful in that. And in this type of external or territorial type sales environment that I'm in now, it very much helped me. It helped me as soon as I started to frame it as I am a relationship builder. I am not a salesperson. Right. So I am going in there and I want to build a relationship with you. And, perhaps that is, one that works, depending on whatever person that is. And maybe that person is just not receptive to that. And I have to accept that. Right. Because these things are okay. And I'm not going to try to, make, if I'm apple juice and somebody really loves orange juice, then hey, who am I to say that you should like apple juice? I'll try to convince you, but yeah,
that's true.
This is it. So I would say that for me, that kind of role transition, it had actually been a lot easier, because even while I was still working as a finance manager, I was going and working open houses for dealers when they would be hosting open houses, and I would be there as kind of a person, on the floor. Or I'd be working at some of the trade shows that would happen throughout the province. And then, slowly but surely I would, take a week or 2 weeks, in the spring and the fall, and go do dealer visits, with just the dealers that we worked with, and go through, their account reviews and talk about their numbers year over year, talk about trends we would see in the industry, and bring some of that knowledge. So, slowly but surely I started to get more and more primed for that type of role until it finally happened. So.
Oh, wow. So yeah, I mean, you went through, you're doing what you're doing now, the financing, and before all that, you're doing psychology, which plays a massive part. In selling. I mean, finding out like who people are, what makes them tick, all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, have you found that it's like been incredibly beneficial for you to go through that path, sort of thing, for your career now?
It's funny that you say that, because I've never really thought about it that way. And I think for me, I think there's like some undoubtedly, kind of way that, yes, like of course these things have influenced me when I'm going in there. But I think that one of the things that I take a lot of pride in is that when I'm going in, I'm doing so in an authentic way, and I'm not looking for ways to try to, break chips in the armor, so to speak, like what some other salespeople might say. Right. I always try to think about, me being at the front cash, or the front desk, the parts counter of the dealership that I worked at, and thinking about, if I'm the salesperson, or if I'm the person who's coming in off the door, how am I going to make other people feel? And that is what I'm trying to do when I go in there, while also trying to talk about like, hey, we offer a service that I think that you may be interested in. There's a reason why, we are the largest in Ontario. There's a reason why we do all this. If you're open to a conversation about it, let's have a conversation. But also, I'm not here to, try to really grind you for something.
Right.
And maybe it is the psychology of understanding that most people don't want to feel like they've been ground down.
No one wants to be sold, man.
No,
It's
man.
one of those
That's
things,
true, especially nowadays too. Especially with what's available on social media. I think before it was like we look to salespeople as to be the convincer of what we don't know. Right now, it's like you can pre-educate yourself in a matter of 8 hours about that one singular thing or item.
Yeah.
Versus a salesperson has to learn all of what they're selling. And of course, each dealer is harder than others, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. No. Wow. So, and I mean, that's just it. It's, I was talking with somebody not too long ago about how, most customers, when they're coming in the door, have more product knowledge about one specific product than, the salespeople, themselves. The salespeople, are very generalists and knowing like a little bit, and for each person, they might have a product group that they're really, really strong in. Right. But for the most part, if a customer is coming in and they're starting to throw specs at, okay, well, I know that this one's 1,470 pounds and, it has this, this, and this. It's like, okay, well, you've clearly done your research and this is the only thing that you've been looking at. Meanwhile, me on the sales floor, I've taken like 5 other calls about 6 other things. And my brain has been going from compartment to compartment to compartment trying to think about these things.
And you have to switch on a flick of a switch, right? You have to, because if the type of client that you're talking to too, whether you could have a 20-year-old or someone in their 50s, totally a completely different type of conversation that you're going to have with that person too.
For sure. No, that's exactly it. And so I think about that, both on like an inside sales kind of perspective as what you're saying, and then also how can I think about that when I'm approaching my world. And when I'm going into these dealerships, these dealers are the experts of their domain, right? Like these dealership owners have built these, buildings from the ground up, or they've purchased successful businesses and continued to run them, or purchased, businesses that maybe weren't as successful and have turned them into that. And so, for me to go in and to try to tell them like, here's what this is, I mean, oh my gosh, I might as well just, turn tail and walk out the door. But, if I go in there and try to learn about their business, and then if I go in there and try to say, hey, I think that there's maybe actually a gap here in what, you're currently doing and what we can offer for you. Is it something that you're open to talking about? Right. And if you at least frame it in a way that's like, hey, do you want to talk about it or not? Then most people usually aren't mad at you or angry. Yeah. Versus like, hey, so we're the best, so you should, what I mean? Yeah. It feels different.
Have you ever had an experience like someone just like was just so ignorant, or like, they just shut you down sort of thing, or like a really bad experience that you're like, damn, man, I don't know if this is something that I really want to do anymore. Like, anything, in the past?
Like that? Yeah. I've definitely had my moments, man. I remember it was probably it was actually like the first time that I, had gone into, gone out on the road and I was going into a certain spot. And I went into the spot, I was chatting, I ended up speaking with the one salesperson there who was, very kind, very nice, etc. And he said, hey, I'm actually going to introduce you to the owner. He's just over here. He was working on, it looked like installing like a new TV, at the service desk and for folks who are coming in. And so it was just like, yeah, not interested. Like, all right. I was like, hey, okay. And like, me very eager, very excited. And I tried to push a little bit, and then just very much made it clear that like, I do not have the time of day for you. And I am not whatsoever interested in what you're having to do. And I said, okay, no problem. And I bit my tongue, and I just, said to the sales guy, I said, thank you for your time. I'll check in the next time I'm around, knowing fully well I'm probably going to drive by the door and I'm not going to go in.
Right.
Now, I drove by the next time that I was in that area, but the time after that, I thought, you know what? This dealership owner is probably dealing with so many other things that me going in there to talk about what I'm doing is the most important thing to me.
Sure.
But this business owner is also dealing with, me coming in off the street, somebody that he's never met before, who's looking for a bit of his time. He has, employees that he's trying to make sure that they're all following their tasks and doing what they're doing. And he also has customers who are calling him about certain things, all while he's trying to install a darn TV. So, like, of course this guy doesn't have the time for me because I caught him at a really bad moment.
Sure.
And so what has made, this role easier for me is reminding myself that these are not personal, attacks to me. This is not, somebody holding any sort of grudge towards me personally, unless I incite that. But, in instances like that, like, you know what, maybe I'm just catching this person at the wrong day. And so I went back, and we've been working with them since. And
Wow.
it ended up being a conversation where it's like, I said, hey, I just wanted to say, I'm really sorry if I'd done something the last time that I was here. I just felt like we got off on the wrong foot. And he said, hey, man, I'm really sorry. You caught me just at the worst possible time. I said, I get that.
And you were going to drive by.
Well, and I did. I did that the first time, but the second time I was like, I can't drive by again. I gotta see. So we did.
That's incredible, man. For people to hear that, and to be persistent and keep trying, sort of thing. Eventually something's gonna give, and you try long and hard enough, and it's gonna happen. So,
what would you say is the best part about your job?
The best part about my job is I get to talk to people every day, and I get to build relationships every day. Cool. And I know that might sound, corny to some people, but for me, this is what lights my fire.
Right.
And I'm somebody that, if you talk to my friends, if you talk to people who've known me for a long time, I've started to accept it more now, but I find myself in the center of these just like beautiful networks of people. Where I've got a friend that does this, and I've got a friend that does that, and I've got people who have seen and experienced really cool things. And for me, I deeply, deeply value that sense of community that I was brought up in. And now today I get to foster a sort of a community, and I get paid to do it. So for me, that's something that is one of the best parts about my job.
Now, how do you find, because with you saying that you were always on the road and you're always going to dealer to dealer to dealer, and with also too that because PosPro is just a central location in North Bay.
Yeah.
How do you find being on the road all the time?
Yeah. So, for folks, out there, PosPro is located in North Bay, and we do business from, Hearst, Ontario, 7 hours north of North Bay, all the way down to Windsor and across to Ottawa and everywhere in between. But, we do everything remotely, and we do everything via email, so the folks in the office aren't needing to go, and clients don't need to travel as much. But for me, though, I find that the greatest successes that I've had have come from that in-person, face-to-face. I'm getting a chance to meet you. You're getting a chance to gauge my nonverbal cues to know, hey, I'm not a threat, man. I'm just looking to chat.
Right.
And I guess maybe I did learn a bit of psychology along the way.
Definitely did, man.
Yeah. But for me, it is hard because like my weeks look like, Mondays are my office day where I'm either working from home or I'm working out of, my local coffee shop because, the Twigs Coffee Roasters in Northern Ontario is hard to beat. And the folks that are probably watching this know that I am there every Monday in my coffee office or coffice. But cool. Tuesday through Friday, I'm on the road, man. And I am pounding pavement. And I am, this past year I put on 100,000 kilometers on my car. And, it's a good thing that I bought a comfortable car because otherwise, that would be a hard ride. But I would say that it's challenging a lot of times. The miles aren't easy. And I know that I've got, myself, I've got a big battery. I've got a lot of juice that I can spend, but there's some weeks, where maybe I'm doing something on the weekend, or maybe if I'm seeing somebody and they live in a different city, so I'm always traveling to do that. It takes a toll on you when you never have a chance to recharge. So I would say that when I get overly ambitious, that's when it tends to be the hardest. But when I take care of myself and I do the things that are going to help me recharge, like, staying active, making healthy choices while I'm out there, spending quality time with friends, and, that being conversations like this, for instance. These are the things that kind of really revitalize me and get me ready to go for every Tuesday. So.
Sure.
Wow.
Now, if let's say someone viewing this video or listening to the podcast, if they're out there and they're like, you know what, Adam's a pretty cool guy. Seems like he has a great job.
Yeah.
You know, maybe it's something that they might want to pursue or look into.
Yeah.
Any advice, maybe some schooling that maybe they can go out and look at to eventually, you know, maybe have a job in your world.
In this kind of world, absolutely, yeah. So what I would say to somebody who's definitely interested in the power sports, marine recreational space as a whole, there's a ton of positions and there's a ton of jobs out there, and dealerships are really looking for help. There's throughout the last handful of years, we've seen a lot of challenges with staffing and folks being able to retain, and we've seen a lot of great people retire, and darn it, they deserve it. But we also need people to fill those positions and to fill those spots. So if folks are out there that are looking to crack into the industry, I know for a fact that even for young people, say if you're in high school, I know that Boating Ontario has some programs that are in place to get young people who are interested in the marine world, getting them paired up and giving them experiences to show what that looks like. And I also know that if you are in your local town or city and that's a world that interests you, then that's something to pursue. So that's talking about that kind of industry as a whole. Talking about the role of being, say, like an on-road type salesperson. My gosh, there's pick an industry and there's a type of role for that.
Sure.
So, whether that's when I was in university, one of my roommates, she had, done a summer job where she was working for a major brewing company, and she was doing that on-road sales to, the LCBOs, to different, restaurants and the like. I've also had friends of mine that do that in other types of, worlds too. So, in terms of like an on-road or a territory type sales, pick an industry and there's something that's like that out there.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. And then on the finance side of things, I mean, if you wanted to start financing, like even mortgages. I mean, you said it's basically, mortgages for recreational vehicles and whatnot. I guess like a finance course for the most part would work out well.
For sure. Yeah. And I know that you'd also asked about what schooling tends to look like, or what that might be for somebody who's looking to maybe perhaps pursue education to get into this. I would definitely say that on the finance side of things, or even on that kind of road rep, road sales type world, usually like a college or university diploma or degree in business, or like a business administration, or if you're doing something that's perhaps more focused. I know in certain types of road rep positions, a marketing type background can sometimes be helpful. More of a straight kind of hard finance world, an economics major or something could really help you. But I mean, my gosh, it's funny how even if you don't have any of those things, like I said, like my degree was in neuroscience and stats, and here I am, right? So it's funny how how much sometimes the skills that you build throughout your path and throughout your journey will be able to help you and impact you along the way, even if you're learning what the minutia of a day in that role looks like.
Well, it's pretty cool because even for a finance manager and for, I guess, your position as well too, like your position, you really just got to be a great talker, position the dealers at ease for their finance needs. But even to be a finance manager, you really don't need any education to do it. You really just got to find the dealership that wants to let you represent the customer to the banks and do the proper credit applications. I mean, I know it's a lot of education by itself, but the cool part is that you actually don't even have to go get a degree or a course like you would a real estate agent, or even like for Ontario, you have to have an ONVIC license to sell
on-road motor vehicles.
Right. So that's a test, but again, it's not a course. But even for this, I guess you'd still need your ONVIC license for that, right?
For sure, right. For sure. And what I would say is that like if you were looking to be a finance manager and either working in a car dealership or doing something else out there, it's not as if there's a government exam that you need to write. Like if you were to sell like term or universal life insurance, like if you were to go to an insurance broker to sell. Right. There's not that. There is an Ontario specific one. And I can really, again, only speak to Ontario because that's where kind of my experience starts and ends. But there is a certification that's out there, so that way you're able to sell motor vehicles, on-road motor vehicles, that you're trained in automotive law and ethics in Ontario. But apart from that, that's really it. You know, it's not as if you need to have a master's degree to do these things. And it's not as if you need to have a university degree or college diploma to be a finance manager somewhere. A hiring manager may value that if they see your application in the pile. And I find a lot of the time that, you know, your education will end up giving you a lot of these, you know, out of the classroom type skills like time management, like critical thinking, like being able to take a different perspective that will help you, you know, be successful in these types of roles. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the degree that you took needs to be aligned with that.
Now, I guess with your position, it's different because is your position a salary, or is it based on commission per dealer that you go to?
So it is different, and you know, we'll probably end up chatting about that on the next podcast, JJ. But you know, it is one of these where, you know, every on-road salesperson is usually compensated differently. Where you know, a lot of on-road salespeople are commission based, and some have a salary and commission split, and some are straight salary. You know, that's about it. But I would say in like an on-road, you know, most of the time it's largely commission based, and you know, you are earning based off of what you are generating out there.
Yeah, and it's not even just the financing. Like, it's not just the applications that you're putting in. You also need to be a spokes and salesperson as well too to be a finance manager, because not only are you doing the credit applications, but you need to convince the consumer that like extended warranty, gap coverage, all that kind of stuff to protect your loan, your finance. Like, what kind of things that you guys offer with PosPro?
Yeah, so with PosPro, we offer a full portfolio of protection products for the consumer. So we offer them what we call Creditors Insurance. So that would include things like life insurance, where if you were to pass away, then the loan is paid off in full. Disability coverage, where if you get hurt or injured and you can't work for 30 days or more, your loan payments are paid until you're able to get back to work. Loss of employment, you know, as well as things like extended warranty coverage. And we have a few theft and write-off protections as well that we offer. So if those types of things happen, then there's some money going back, or at least some benefit there for the consumers. Right. So we have many different products that we offer. We have certain ones that are, you know, just kind of like dent and ding, you know, for RVs. And we offer kind of a full spectrum of products. So
yeah, and you got to educate the customer too, right? Because I mean, a lot of people don't know. They think it's an upsell. They don't want to don't want to up their payments because they probably already had negotiate their payment with the dealer. But a lot of it's important too for the people, especially nowadays. You got to protect yourself, right?
Well, I mean, you know, at the end of the day, it's a product, and you know, we're going to make money off of the product if we sell it. But it's important for us to sell products that, one, we believe in, and two, that are important and make sense for the customer. Right. So our job is to educate the customer, give them their options, and give them the information, and say, well, what would you like to do? Yeah, it's what do you what see how I like the podcast had that in there. Yeah, it's just what makes sense for you, and that's what's going to help us, you know, keep that customer for life.
Yeah, I really want this quad, man. Like, just hook me up, bro. Like, I'll sign anywhere.
Get me going. So, it's like,
need a new one.
Oh, yeah. Let's you know, pump the brakes a little bit, and then let's talk about what makes sense for you.
We'll get Cal pre-approved after this meeting.
Yeah, that's it. We'll write you up in no time, man. It's all good.
Yeah. Well, we're about to wrap up, but just a final question: would you change anything about your life? Like, do you regret not following through the schooling that you went to into the position that you are today? How do you feel? Would you take anything back, looking backwards?
You know, it's a great question, because, you know, I think that we would be foolish to say that we would never think about these things, right? I think that I would be totally wrong and you know, blowing smoke if I said that was, you know, I'd never thought about it. But what I would say is that I thought about it perhaps earlier on after making my decision that I'm going to see this through. And one of the things that I really love about PosPro and about, you know, working there is I could see that we were right on this precipice of this huge exponential growth, and there's just like a few things that kind of, you know, needed to happen, and some shifts and some process updates and some changes, and we were able to go through those things, and those things were hard, but we were able to do them together, and we came out on the other side stronger. And one of the things that, as I reflect back on that time, that I really value doing in my life is I like to build things. and I like to be a part of building things. And I think that most people do, because it helps you feel like I have, a sense of fulfillment and a sense of, start and a finish to something that you've done with intention. Right. So, do I regret not pursuing, further education? I would say that there's some times that I wish that, I'd perhaps, pursued further schooling, but I get that itch scratched by still participating in research, at the university. And, one of the professors that I worked with were putting out a paper, and it's, out for publishing now. So I'm still getting that itch scratched in a way. But all of this to say is, as I've looked back on the last year and a bit of me being on the road and me, talking to people, and there've been really hard days, and there's been a lot of days where I just leave just with a big smile on my face as I'm driving, back to the hotel or driving home. Yeah. And I just feel to myself that I'm exactly where I need to be. Cool. And I think for me, knowing that I'm living my life in alignment with what brings me joy and that brings other people, joy, and as I'm building this, community of sorts as I go, I wouldn't want it to be any other way. Cool.
Awesome. Cal, you got any questions yourself, or?
I think one last question that I'm thinking about is, 5-10 years, kind of where do you think you're going to be at?
Yeah, so I would say in the next 5-10 years, I don't know what the role would look like within PosPro, but I don't think we're done building yet. And cool. And I think that for us, where our company has really only ever been in Ontario before, but I know that for us the sky is the limit. And 5-10 years from now, I want our name to be synonymous when you think of financing your next toy. Right. And when just like Kleenex and facial tissue, it's like when you think of that, I want that to be who you think of and who you want to lean on. So what does it look like for me in the next 5-10 years? Build a network, and can work with the great team and work with the management and work with ownership, so that way we can have that happen for us too. So
cool. Wow, I just want to say a huge thank you, Adam, for coming on the show.
Hey, man, this is a ton of fun. Yeah, thank you, guys. Yeah.
Had some good laughs, had some good education, hopefully, for everyone that's listening out there. We want to inspire a lot of people that, if you are looking to get into the financing world, or even just an on-road spokesperson, because there's definitely a need for more salespeople out there, obviously in the financing world as well, too. Huge thank you to PosPro for letting you come on to the show and discussing, what it is to do what you do. And your journey. So thank you so much for that. Everyone on the show, if you are listening, be sure to hit that subscribe button, or if you're listening onto a podcast, hit the follow button, like the video. We definitely want to keep more podcasts like this coming out, and we want to grow as quickly as possible. So thank you again, everybody, for watching, listening, and we will definitely catch you in the next podcast. See you guys.